The Dublin against Kerry rivalry, what does it feel like to be involved in it?
I suppose growing up playing with St Vincent's in Dublin, obvious, but no, growing up playing with St Vincent's, there was a large number of players on that Dublin team in the 70s from the club who we would have heard about, the likes of Jimmy Keevy and Brian Mullins and Tony Hannah, a lot of them, Bobby Doyle, a good few other guys, Guy O'Driscoll. And we would have heard how successful they were as part of that Dublin team, and also as part of the club and the Club All Ireland, I think, in '76. So you were very much aware of the rivalry that existed in the 70s and into the 80s. You know, when you're playing kind of minor under 21 with Dublin, and you're playing against the likes of Kerry, the fact that their seniors were so dominant for such a long time, that did tend to get in your psyche, and you quite often would be going out playing a minor or under 21 inter-county game against them, and they could have 2 or 3 points on you just between your ears before the ball was even thrown up. So to kind of break that hoodoo in 2011 was, I think that's been a seismic shift in the mindset of Dublin players up and coming now, but also the Kerry guys who are now up and coming. But you have to, if you go back to, I think it was a league game, maybe 2010 or possibly 2011 down in Killarney, where we bet Kerry down there in a league match for the first time in about 30 odd years. And I know we bet them in the championship in 2011 for the first time in probably 30 odd years too. But that game down there itself was a huge significance in terms of a psychological confidence that we took from it.
And if you're so you made your debut for Dublin in 2007,
2007, yeah.
And then if you jump on to 2000 and was it 2006 or 7 that you lost to them in a quarter final?
2000 and I think 2009.
That was the one where you were hammered, but there was one maybe a year or two before that. Maybe you weren't on the panel, but 2009 anyway.
We lost against themselves in Tyrone.
Yeah.
And Mayo in 06 then as well, but we lost against Tyrone and Kerry at quarter-final, semi-final stage during that period, yeah.
So what about that game in 09? It was 17 points, I think, for a finish. What are your memories of that? And, you know, Pat Gilroy obviously made the reference to the start of the year weeks.
Yeah, so my memories were of how tasty this cornetto was. I was eating in the stand because I'd been suspended. I got put off against Kildare in the Leinster final for something silly, and so I was kind of up in the stand, so a part of me was selfishly happy that I wasn't out on the pitch, because this is a hiding to nothing, and you could see it from the very off that Kerry didn't really respect Dublin fellas, and I think our guys, again, between the 6 inches between the ears, it didn't feel like they were good enough probably at the time that we could kind of get over the line. So again, as an individual, I was kind of somewhat probably happy not to be part of such a hiding.
And how tough, did you go into the dressing room after that, or because you were in the stands? Did you?
Oh, you did, yeah, you went down afterwards.
What was it like?
Just very, very, very quiet, like guys were embarrassed, and then you began to kind of feel embarrassed as a player, and feel for the lads who were out in the field to be part of that group. Yeah, look, we've all been in those dressing rooms where, you know, I've suffered 1 or 2 big defeats like that in my time. No one's kind of talking, everyone's afraid to make eye contact because you know you didn't do yourself justice. But yeah, lads just went off, had a few beers, and it was probably a couple of months later we began to sit down with Pat in a couple of individual meetings and team meetings to see could we sort the problem out and bridge that gap.
Because in 2010 you were very close. You were like, you possibly could have beaten Cork in that All-Ireland semi-final. You probably feel you should have.
Yeah.
And then 2011, you get through the semi-final. You're playing good football. What's Pat saying to your own club man coming into that All-Ireland final against Kerry?
So Pat, again, for those who know Pat, he's a super guy, very affable. He wants to get the best out of you, and he's also very kind of straight up character then as well. The one thing that Pat and Mickey Whelan with him as well, and the management team, what they were strong on is ensuring that everyone understood what was expected of them. And it took 2 or 3 seasons for them to kind of get those messages across, and a few lads have to be dropped, myself included on occasion, to understand that if you're not doing what's being asked of you, there are going to be consequences, and other guys will get a chance. So going into that final. Jeez, it's hard to kind of remember now. My kind of only memory of the 3 weeks between the semi-final and the final was I think the media day we did in Parnell Park, where all the kids kind of came on the pitch, and it was a kind of casual open training session. I just remember kind of having a bit of crack with Pat and him just saying, "Look, isn't this what it's all about? It's great to win an All-Ireland final." And we were just kind of standing there smiling away. I think there's a snap going around from the time of the two of us having a laugh and chatting. So I was quite a relaxed individual, still am, but you'd been confident of the work that you'd put in behind the scenes, that was enough to get you over the line.
So you did think we are going to win this game, despite the history?
I thought that we were going to give the best account of ourselves,
right,
without getting wishy-washy on you. But I was confident that everyone, again, the real success of that team, and I've probably said it before, was the fact that Pat took on a group of highly fit, somewhat committed guys, but massive egos, and he had to kind of shrink those individual egos to strengthen the ego of the team, I guess, in terms of the collective. And it was clear, and we were all confident that going into certainly the 2011 campaign as a whole, but certainly that final, that guys were going to play for one another, we were going to work for one another. The corner forward was going to track back. Everyone was going to do what was best for the team, and if that was good enough, great, and if it wasn't, well, still a success, but thankfully it was good enough.
And is it by dropping players at different times? Is that how you shrink the egos, or did he go about, saying it to different players that it's not about you, it's about us? Yeah,
there was, being a manager of a team has to be challenging, whether it's kind of club or county. And certainly when you're managing your own county, there's a lot more of a spotlight on you, I think, because you're living and working in the area. So how you communicate with guys, sometimes in probably the initial stage with Pat, I'd say, was probably leaking out to maybe the press, or there wasn't that kind of watertight trust that did exist come 2011, and obviously exists now in the current setup. So I imagine Pat would have had to talk nicely to a couple of guys, give them an opportunity to see how they respond, and then I suppose he would have had to have become more stern in his communication, and that there are consequences if you're not willing to buy into the bigger collective.
You don't know who you would have gone after, do you?
I do, but that's history, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And like you were a few points behind coming into the final stages of that game. Is there anything that kind of springs to mind? I mean, some people would have said you could have easily gotten a second yellow card because you came. Yeah, I suppose maybe you weren't fully in control of what way you were trying to tackle, but
yeah.
Were you kind of for a second going, uh-oh?
Well, a bit like for Richie Hogan in the final on Cathal Barrett. He was going in to make an honest hit. He timed it wrong, and I suppose he just technically they're clamping down on the high hits in Gaelic hurling, Gaelic football and hurling. A bit of an L segue is I was watching the 1996 Leinster hurling final last night, TG Carher between Offaly and Wexford. Wexford won for Leinster for the first time in 19 years, and the amount of flaking and hits that went in and high hurls, but it was kind of accepted and guys kind of got on with it, and it wasn't like there was anything particularly dirty, it was all borderline stuff, but guys were giving it and kind of taking it, and that's probably the philosophy of hurling that Richie would have grown up in and probably expected, and I think he was probably disappointed to be put off, which, coming back to Gaelic football, my own case, with Declan O'Sullivan, unbelievable player, and I think he was certainly player of the year at least once in numerous All-Stars, so he was someone we were very worried about going into the final. On that particular occasion, Michael Darragh Macaulay actually put a bit of a tackle on him initially, and he slipped, and I couldn't get out of the way, nor was I going to get out of the way, because you're not supposed to, nor were he either.
Well, there's an All-Ireland at stake.
An All-Ireland at stake, yeah. And he was left exposed because of the initial hit from Michael Darragh, but it was a yellow, I think, Yeah. Now I was a bit caught-headed in an incident after that. Then Kieran Donaghy, quite talented in lots of ways, but also talented in terms of gamesmanship, and I'd been awarded 3, and I think it was himself and Nancy Marr, but particularly Donaghy, just give my head an old pat, I suppose.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, on all sides of my head, but so I was a bit hot-headed at that time, but Eamon Fennell, my club mate, won the throw-up, and we managed to go up, and I think we got the winning point maybe from that, or the awarded the winning 3 maybe, possibly, trying to remember. Yeah.
And of course, you obviously had ringside seat for that. I mean,
Oh,
were you
yeah.
at a position where you could just watch it sailing over?
Yeah, so Stephen was obviously the designated free taker that season, and like most teams, you have your kind of a bit of a plan in place when he's going up to take the frees. So we'd all kind of filter back one. So in that case, I was still kind of holding the centre back position. I was probably working with Eamon Fennell at the time, that if the ball goes short, that he'd come back to centre back. I'd push back to the full back line and give Stephen a chance to get in goal. Otherwise, Rory or Carl would jump and goal. But that aside, yeah, you know, his coolness coupled with his talent, it was an unbelievable stroke, and he didn't take too much time thinking. He just put it down and kicked it over, you know.
And when that went and the final whistle went, I mean, as a neutral, the place went insane, and it was an unbelievable atmosphere. What did it feel like for you?
So it was probably the first time Kevin Nolan got a point. I think that was the equaliser. After Kev Mack's goal.
Then Brogan.
And then Bernard got one.
Then Donaghy.
Donaghy got a great point, in fairness to him, and Stephen then got the last one. But you definitely, between Kevin Nolan's point, certainly Kev Mack's goal, and Cluckel's point at the end, you were not so much disorientated, but your focus was kind of altered for a brief second. That, wow, you could actually feel the energy reverberating around the place, physically feel it, like, you know, hitting you. Oh yeah, it was massive. But then you kind of tune back in the way we have been all year, and are working towards that level of focus, is that we didn't get too excited about scoring a goal, we didn't get too disappointed about conceding a goal. We just tried to go out and do our jobs and adapt and evolve on the field as we seen things happening. So that was the headspace we were all in. Like, so the resulting kick out from Cluxton's point, you know, everyone's in position pretty much, ready to put a press on. And
did you ever feel anything like the noise and the emotion of the final whistle that day?
The only way I've been asked this before, and a lot of the times going around visiting schools with the cup and camps and that type of thing, what's it like to win All Ireland? But when you wake up Christmas morning as a kid and you're going down to the sitting room, as we did in our family home, to see what Santa brought you, the anticipation and the excitement that you kind of remembered as a kid, and we still all remember it. It was actually the same kind of excitement. Yeah, for 10 or 15 seconds, 20 seconds, just kind of euphoria. It was a cool feeling. Christmas, Santa came as an adult, you know.
And then in 2013, you beat them. Then you were playing that day. 15 and 16. I spoke with Darren O'Sullivan recently, and he said it's become an obsession to beat Dublin at this stage. Why has the tide turned so firmly? So, you know, when you're continually, say in our case, up until 2011, and that league game, I must double check it now, whether it was 2010 or 2011, that we bet Kerry down in Kerry. We just kept losing to them the whole time. We might have drawn every so often, but we kept losing to them. So once that kind of hoodoo was kind of broken, you know, a bit of inner confidence begins to rise within you, and then you kind of back yourself and you kind of say, well, do you know what, we actually are as good as them, provided we kind of stick to the game plan, stick to what we're being asked to do, and keep kind of working at it. And the chances are now at the moment we'll come out on the right side of the result. Did anyone predict the tide turning as much as it has? I don't think anyone could have predicted it. But it is as it is for now. Again, for a long time, the first half of my career was spent playing against Kerry teams that, you know, they kind of respected you, but they didn't really. And nice fellas off the field, in fairness, but on the field they didn't really care. I'm not saying the Dublin guys are like that now, but initially when the tide began to turn, I certainly began to feel that way, that certainly once the ball was thrown up, you didn't care who you were playing against. And
The fact we drew against Kerry, we drew Kerry in the All-Ireland final in 2011, was even an additional motivator, and I think it'll be a big motivator for the lads going into the games on the week, that they are playing against the aristocrats of Gaelic football. And quite often you do hear it being said that it's not an All-Ireland really unless you beat Kerry along the way, and I think that that saying still holds truth in the Dublin camp.
And do you think that they go in now feeling like unless we do everything absolutely perfect, we're going to get pulled apart eventually?
Yeah, I would say without obviously perfection is impossible, but I think that desire to be excellent and to try to do the right thing for the team, I think that's something that they'll have to back themselves on, based on results. And again, looking at the small bit of sums I was doing earlier, if you look at what Dublin have scored on average their 7 games to date versus what they've conceded, Dublin have scored 27 points a game in 7 games. On average, Kerry have scored 22. Dublin have conceded 12 points a game on average, and Kerry have conceded 16. So I think the spread, as the bookies are calling it, is roughly 5 points. And the bookies haven't been wrong so far this year with Dublin. Now, that said, it's Kerry, it's an All-Ireland final. Strange things can happen in an All-Ireland final, and particularly against the aristocrats of Gaelic football. The Kerry guys won't want to be given the 5 in a row title.
So since you retired in 2015, do you think Dublin have actually gotten better in terms of like per player, per like even tactic system, whatever way you want to look at it? Yeah. Dublin are a better team, are they?
Yes.
Are they continuing to evolve?
I'd say there is the aggregation of the team year on year has continued to go in an upward trajectory. There certainly the physicality and the fitness, that kind of argument that you hear pundits thrown around, Asher, so-and-so weren't fit enough. You know, the top 8 football and hurling teams in the country, put them into a gym, put them on a bleep test, they're all hitting the same numbers.
You see that, like through being UCD head of GA, you see that the players from different counties are at similar physical levels?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like it's not sports science, not that it's not rocket science to be saying that, but you know, there's certain benchmarks physically that needs to be reached in order to perform at the optimum level in Gaelic football over the 70 or 80 minutes as it tends to be now. And the top teams are all hitting those same numbers. So it comes down to a bit of game intelligence, raw natural talent, and certainly decision making then on the ball. So I think one thing that's impressed me this year is how clinical Dublin have been. When they do have the ball, rarely is any player making the wrong decision when they're in possession. They're slow to take the riskier pass. Although one change this year that's been notable is the ball being kicked into the full forward line by the Dublin players.
Because it seemed to be kind of hand passed and worked the whole way around in an arc until someone was coming through last year. Yeah. It was quite tedious to watch even.
It's boring, yeah. Gaelic football is 15-a-side basketball in many ways. Everyone attacks together, everyone defends together. In fairness to Dublin, they certainly do try to kick the ball forward, more so this year. I think Kerry certainly over the course of the year, I think there's maybe one league game against Tyrone, they tried to be quite defensive, but I don't think it suited the style of players they have, and they've since gone away from that. But Kerry are looking to kind of outscore you, and that's the type of players that they have. And in fairness, they're looking to play good football as well.
So just to touch back again on the calibre of athlete that you'd see coming through the doors at UCD, and like Dublin, or you know, even Kieran Archer now coming through. Yeah. I'm not even sure if he's UCD, but like
I think he's going to DCU.
Okay.
So I heard,
So he's the under-20 footballer of the year. Another special-looking player coming through. People always reference the likes of Con, Paul Mannion, Kieran Kilkenny, different players that have gone to maybe different colleges. Like, what is it that's setting some of these guys apart? Because if you're saying physically they're all similar enough, or they hit the same sort of measurements on bleep tests, etc. What is it that these young guys from Dublin are stepping up, and the team is just can't be matched at the moment?
I suppose from again that's kind of strength and condition perspective, and in terms of maybe the methodology of coaching. there is a bit of uniformity within, I guess, the Dublin setup. And if you look back, I think it was the Blue Wave maybe, and was it 2009-10, the late Andy Kettle as county board chairman was involved in overseeing that, where it's written down in a document that's free for people to download, is to try to put a bit of sameness or similarity on
all
the
the way
coaching
up through the development squads.
Yeah, all the way up. So not that you're creating robots, but you're looking at what's best practice, what works, what can we learn from other professional sports in terms of developing players.
What sort of athlete are you trying to produce?
What sort of value are you trying to produce? So when again an archer, or again there's numerous Patter Coffey Byrne, who is in UCD, he's just finished his first year of college. He got a run in the Tyrone game the day after losing the under-20 final to Cork. But Patter is developing quite physically over the last kind of couple of years, but he's been doing the similar kind of weights or similar kind of training that the senior guys are doing. It's tailored to the younger body, and that you're not what would you call it? Overexerting yourself or putting too much press on the guy. But the thinking or the rationale in achieving those little kind of goals over the course of the year, whether it's in the gym or whether it's a particular skill that you're working on, there's a process there,
And then mentality-wise, I guess coming from the countryside myself and playing up in Dublin, you'd see that the numbers up here means that, and especially if teams going well, you could have 20, even 30 lads all pushing and in competition with each other to try and get better physically, etc., doing extra work because they're all in competition to try and get a piece of the pie in a team that's going somewhere. Whereas down in, let's say, somewhere rural, if the numbers aren't huge, a player could just kind of show up and be like guaranteed his place, so he doesn't necessarily have to get the best out of himself all the time. Is that something you see reflected when they come up here?
Yeah, and that's actually a fair way of looking at it, Shane, is within the larger towns, maybe Portlaoise or obviously Dublin then as well, where there's more fish swimming in the sea, there's more competition there. A lot of guys that will come into UCD, good fellas, they could be coming from smaller rural towns where, or they've just been physically a bit stronger growing up just naturally, and they've probably gotten away with a lot more in local competitions or playing with their underage teams. But when it comes to face a team that's, what would you call it, where more competition exists.
So they were the big fish in the small pond. Now they're meeting a lot of other big fish.
And coming to terms with that is something that I enjoy working with a lot of our players, as do our senior coaches here, the senior footballers and hurlers, and trying to bring those guys on to help them develop critically themselves, to kind of think that way, to look at their own areas of their own game. And to see where they can improve. But I think good competition does breed success amongst the type of player who mentally is willing to face that challenge and to.
So some guys mentally can't get past the idea of formerly big fish in the small pond, and everyone kind of, sort of refers to you or defers to you almost because you are the player. All of a sudden they come up here and that identity is gone because there's other big fish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do some not get over that?
Well, that's just a natural order thing. Some guys adapt, some guys try to adapt, but they don't quite make it. And certainly on the rare occasion to be a couple of guys that just kind of fall away, unfortunately, despite kind of best efforts. But again, you look at any sport or again across the world, any professional or high performance sports, there's many guys of similar talent. There's guys who are more talented than other fellas, but sometimes the other fellas who are maybe less naturally talented but have it between the ears are the guys to progress because they're willing to embrace challenge and they're willing to learn, and their humility, I guess, is a big factor in it.
So Dublin dismantled Mayo in the All-Ireland semi-final. Why do you think all of a sudden it just fell apart? Is it as simple as Con scores a goal and Mayo mentally wilt? Or is there something more to it that they'd been hanging on by a fingernail and then that was just the end of them?
I'd say to sum up the first half, Mayo in fifth gear and Dublin were probably in second gear. At half time, again, it's no massive kind of secret that people maybe think what goes on in the dressing room at half time. It's not different to many good clubs or many good teams where it's quite analytical. Look, here's what we set out to do. Are we doing it? Why not? Let's go about making a change, or physically making a change, making a substitute if a guy isn't doing what he's been asked to do. And that is what happened. I would be quite certain at half time in the dressing room for Dublin anyway, is that if guys don't start upping their game, you're going to be knocked out of the championship or you're going to be whipped off. But so for the 12 minutes after half time, I think Dublin were the 8-6 down. I think they went 2-10, maybe the 6 points up within 12 minutes. Guys just upped the intensity. And the Mayo guys began to fall away then, you know. And
it went back to being boring then after that. It was a stressful viewing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, over, and then you're like, it's a snore fest for the rest of it. Yeah. But do you think, right, so there's always this conversation that Dublin have too many advantages, money, all the resources, even, you know, having colleges and stuff like that nearby. Do you think it's unfair for other counties to be expected to challenge Dublin based on those factors?
Well, I think Dublin, when they released that Blue Wave document in around 2010, and I think going back to before that, there was a good report done by Martin Morrissey on the Sunday game, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, that involved John Costello and the GA president, John Horn, and they kind of gave the situation of the state of football or Gaelic games in the county of Dublin in the early 90s, and the number of people playing the game was nowhere near what it should have been, given the volume of people living in the area. And also you have rugby soccer, and then you have probably 500,000 of non-nationals who have no interest in Gaelic games. So how do we go about getting promoting the GA ethos amongst the different communities and the new suburbs that were growing and still continue to grow in Dublin? So it was the GA hierarchy that really came up with a strategy to invest in Gaelic games as a whole within the capital city, to try and bring it up to where it should be. So if you actually look at when that started, that process of investment in schools and local clubs, you know, none of the current fellas playing would have benefited from that initial investment.
So my thought on it would have been, I wasn't even planning on going down this route, but my thought on where all the resources that we'd have would benefit is that other counties, after a while, and especially if you're not really chasing titles, you'd have a huge amount of players walking away. Whereas with Dublin, think of the amount of players that are very, very experienced, can't get their game time anymore, but they're still in there fighting tooth and nail, and that culture of winning, you know, Brogan wants to get back in. Paul Flynn did up until he walked away. Owen O'Gara, Paddy Andrews, etc., that you don't get a drop-off rate because you have the best setup possible, the idea of winning this, that and the other, whereas other counties, guys just say, what's the point? So I think we live in a dream world, or many people live in a dream world in terms of Gaelic football, where everybody should be entered into, you know, the senior competition. Like I think in any code, like in local club championships, you know, it's different. Yeah, it's tiered, and the hurling are, you know, a lot of good things with the hurling structure and the league structure, and they think around with it here and there. But the round robin series for the last number of years, I think, has been hugely exciting in the hurling in Munster and Leinster. There's been some unbelievable games there. I think there needs to be a change probably in the structure of competitions, which gives, with all due respect, the likes of Leitrim or smaller counties like that who love Gaelic football, but realistically they don't have a chance of winning an All-Ireland. So if there's a different carrot put before them, which makes it achievable, well then you get guys to buy into it. And if they were to win a second-tier competition, and then they go up with the other teams. And the problem though is it's a bit like even the good teams are getting hammered by Dublin now.
Oh, it's a massive culture at the moment. And
do you see anything that can be done to sort, like one team is basically as brilliant as they are, and you always feel like you have to say that because you don't want to insult Dublin, it's not their fault, but it's kind of killing Gaelic football a little bit.
It's probably a bit boring to watch at the moment. It's certainly a golden era for Dublin. You have to remember, Shane, like there was 16 years of nothing between 95 and 2011. Before 95, it was 1983. Between to go back to the previous All-Irelands, and then there was 3-1 in the 70s. So there wasn't that many won. I think you go back to 63 after that, and then 58. This is just my Dublin history. But the current setup, the fact that the lads are getting to All-Ireland finals every year, at a canter, you'd have to say, is very interesting. Now, the score difference in all of the All-Ireland finals that Dublin have been in, on average, is only about 2 points of a win. Like 2011, I think it was 1 point. There was the replay with Mayo, won by a point as well. So when it comes to the finals, there doesn't tend to be that much between the teams. But my Dublin hat off. Is it exciting to watch at the moment? No. So if I was in other counties, what would I do? I have a lot of good ideas, and I think I probably shared one with you, is to have that uniformity in terms of even a strength and conditioning coach. And chatting to another guy recently about it as well, if you have a bit of uniformity and structure for all the guys coming up through the system, that creates good behaviours, good habits, good standards. So when the fellas are brought into the senior setup, they're not long getting up the pace. Yeah,
the reason I would say, anyone who says split Dublin in two, the reason I don't like that is, why should you tell people that the history that you grew up with no longer exists, and the Dublin identity is gone? I think that would be hugely unfair.
That'll never happen.
How do you think the final will go?
I think the final will go according to the average scores that Dublin have managed to get. As I was saying, over the course of the championship, they've averaged 27 points a game. Over the 7 games, Kerry have averaged 22 points a game over the 7 games. I think that'll be the difference. I don't think it'll be 27, 22, but I think there'll be roughly 5 points between it. Both teams started, Kerry and Dublin started their semi-finals poorly. I'd imagine Peter Keane had a similar kind of conversations Jim Gavin would have at half-time. The guys not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and Kerry upped the intensity when they came out against Tyrone. As to Dublin, I would guess that it may go similar to the semi-final between Dublin and Mayo, where Kerry will start off that bit livelier.
Hold on for a while,
longer than half time. I would assume they're that bit younger and fitter. But I think Dublin's ability and cohesiveness, that cohesiveness is key, and the understanding, and everyone knows what they're doing. And particularly if there is a turnover in the Dublin forward line, there's a good structure back there. I think that's one area where Kerry will need to improve. And you mentioned Paul Murphy trying to play a sweeper type role, but the number of balls that Tyrone, kicked balls that Tyrone hit in the first half, they obviously identified that as a weakness in the Kerry full-back line.
He's in no man's land. Like, you've played as sweeper. Is it easy to get caught in no man's land?
If you're not paying attention, it is. If you're too far ahead of the full-back, if you're 15, 20 yards ahead, you're too far ahead. If you're too close, well then it's only like one guy's kind of marking him. So you have to anywhere between 5-6 yards, pick a side, I suppose. But the crossfield ball that Tyrone put in, they caused the Kerry full-back line an awful lot of trouble. I think the lads will have their full-back line. The full-back line for Kerry will have their hands full now on Sunday week.
You could try giving them a few dodgy water bottles, like apparently another county did.
And it's been much more been said about that, or I heard one or two allegations.
All you hear is rumours. I don't think anyone can say that for certain.
Yeah.
More of a cheeky comment than anything else.
More of a cheeky comment after those things happen.
David Clifford, Gainey, Sean O'Brien, or Stephen O'Brien, I should say. Can they cause damage? Yeah,
they can. Like if you look at Stephen O'Brien's goal, it was actually poor marking from Paul Geaney, did great to win the ball and take his man on. And again, Paul's one of the top players over the last number of seasons. But his use of the ball and his vision to see O'Brien's run down the middle, and it was a tough pass to give. There was 3 or 4 Tyrone guys in the way, but he still managed to find O'Brien. But what I like about O'Brien, he's really direct. Really a bit like Jack McCaffrey, really, in terms of how he plays. He likes to kind of throw a dummy, and he has the power and he has the low centre of gravity to be able to kind of get around guys. I think Dublin's Kerry's forward line is certainly, and their midfield is their best asset. I think Clifford has just been a huge addition. Obviously coming out of minor, he think had 2 or 3 years minor, winning a couple of All-Irelands. With Kerry, sometimes it could be a big expectation on the young guy's shoulders, but in fairness to him, he's been able to deliver, and that goal he got in the quarter-final last year. Donaghy high ball in, knocked the ball down to him.
Monaghan.
Against Monaghan, like that was a very calm finish, tight angle. So to be able to produce that, and to be able to now produce it again in the second season, like sometimes guys when they come onto the scene, they have unbelievable seasons. Second year round, opposition defenders are more ready and more astute in how to mark this guy. So it takes a top class player to be able to still deliver those goals, and in fairness to Clifford has been delivering those goals. Kerry's real weakness, for me, is that probably lack of real structure in the defensive setup.
What's missing there? Because everyone keeps talking about people running straight up the centre.
Well, it seems to be a kind of man-on-man type approach from sitting in the seats or watching at home. They seem to be just kind of tag your man, don't let him get past you. If he's trying to make a run for the second or third pass, make sure you have him tagged, don't let him go by. But you have to be aware as a defender that if I have my man stopped up and he's not involved in the play, I need to be looking behind me or beside me to see is there an opponent or one of my teammates that needs an extra hand. And I don't think Kerry kind of have that yet. They don't seem to be coached that particular way.
Well, that kind of makes sense even from the semi-final. Like Jason Foley a couple of times stopped up Colin McShane, but yet no support right. Like if you stop up a defender or an attacker, you expect someone to be there.
Yeah.
But even with Kerry, you make one mistake and there's never going to be any help, and that means the back door's left open. Yeah,
and if you look, the ease, I would say that Tyrone scored certainly in the first half. They were very good diagonal balls. A lot of the time were simple, one bounce into the chest balls into the forwards. With a guy McShane, a lot of the time, Matty Donnelly looping around and just coming in off that angle. They were very, very easy scores to get, I would say. As a full back, I played once in a league game for one half against Stephen O'Neill. I think Johnny Cooper got hurt in the warm-up, and I was actually fairly, feeling good, fairly fit going into that bigger game. And I think he got 4 points on me, O'Neill, and all he had was a half a yard. He was class, but there wasn't enough nearly support coming in from the half-back line. And when you do kind of stop a guy of that quality up, and McShane is having a super season then as well. Will Kerry be able to work on a particular type of game plan that becomes more defensive when they don't have possession? I don't know if they will have enough time to be able to implement it,
Because it's very hard to identify any weakness in this Dublin team, and maybe that's because of cohesion.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say? Is that why? Because I can't see, like even someone like Paul Flynn and Dermot Connolly are no longer starting in the team, and they were considered 2 generational type wing forwards. How will you replace them? You throw in the likes of Niall Scully, who, just ostensibly wouldn't seem to be the same class. He goes in and he seems just as important at doing the same.
He had a great semi-final, didn't he?
Yeah. So what is it that a player who doesn't seem like he should have the same level of quality goes in, and yet still the team is possibly even improving?
Well, again, a lot of it is down to the structure that Jim has set up and built on Pat Gilroy's structure. That players coming in, they know what's expected of them. And KPIs, I suppose, is a term you can use. And if you're in a particular position, if you have possession in this particular part of the field, generally speaking, here's what we'd like you to do. If you're faced with an option to shoot and you're in the right area of the field, you shoot. If that option is none, well then the next thing you should be doing, generally speaking, is passing left, wherever is passing right. But that there is a kind of almost instinctive thought process that occurs in the heads of nearly all the Dublin players now, certainly the front 8, when they have possession, that they're always doing the right thing. So to go back to your original question, Shane, in terms of a weakness, or how do you develop those second string generation players after the likes of Dermot and Niall? I don't know really. You know, a lot of Niall's a hugely talented guy. I remember playing against him when he was only under 21. We'd play a few challenges against those lads, and even with St Vincent's when we were doing well, we played a good few challenges against Dizzy Farrell's 21 team. Who's marking Niall, and I remember thinking to myself, "Jeez, this fella's decent, like, you know." He was playing to the forward, but what's great about Niall, there's no drama with him. He just plays as he sees. He's a tough guy. He goes for the ball. I think he actually got better in the semi-final with Dermot coming back. I think it's a bit of competition. Maybe got him going and raised his game another level as well.
Do you think Dermot will get decent game time? Because, you know, he came on, played the game against Tyrone, which was a nothing game. Then the last day brought in kind of coming into injury time. Do you think he'll see decent game time?
I'd imagine the bar injury, the substitutions will probably roll on in the same order, unless there's an obvious default in the team. That's kind of how I see it going. You'd like to see him come on and get more game time. Akin to Rory O'Carroll, who was out of Gaelic football for a couple of seasons, travelling away. It can be tough to get back up to the level that's required. Dermot's been playing at a high level with the club. He played at a decent level over in Donegal, Boston last year too. So he'd be more than capable, I think, to stepping up to the plate. Yeah, as his club mate, you'd love to see him getting in.
Yeah, like, because 2 years ago, it was when the team was struggling at half time against Mayo. He was brought on and turned the game. Does it need to be that sort of a scenario for him to be bumped higher up the pecking order to be brought in?
Yeah, I would say so. Now, you could argue that the semi-final just gone. It was a possible case for throwing him in because the lads weren't playing particularly well. I think the game against Tyrone, the lads were playing better in that first half than they were in the first half against Mayo just gone. So Jim would have given the guys an opportunity. Again, shouldn't be speaking for him, but that's what I assume. He would have given them 5-10 minutes to get their fucking heads together and start producing what they're supposed to be producing, and then we start making the subs. But thankfully they did against Mayo, against Tyrone. 2 years ago now. That's half time. You know, lads were trying their best. Some guys wasn't happening for them on the day, and Dermot's a big time player, like, you know.
Do you think he's still at the same level?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And it's just, did you even slag him even for messing up with the visa?
I've since packed in Vincent Shane, so
right.
I've taken a step back this year. So I have been up watching the games, all right, and one or two little communications here and there with Dermot, but he's his own man. He's in great shape physically, watching him, and a couple of games I've seen with the club, and he decides to do something. Nearly always comes off, you know. What's
the difference between, like, so you played under Pillar, played under Pat Gilroy and Jim Gavin? Did you see much difference between any of the three? Yeah, well, there as players kind of come and go, as the panel changes and evolves, and under 21s come into the squad. Myself and Dermot would have come in under Pillar, kind of in around the training panel in 2006, a bit of championship time then, 2007. I probably wasn't around Pillar setup long enough to give a good comparison. The one thing the three guys, Pillar, Pat and Jim have in common is their love of Dublin football and their desire to win All Irelands and many of them. Probably with Pillar now, myself, I was a bit headstrong in terms of where I should have been in the pecking order, and the club were going well. We won a Club All Ireland in St Patrick's Day 2008, and I was kind of in good form, and there was probably less change in Pillar's championship teams than you would have seen in the early years of Pat's teams, and even in the early years of Jim's teams, where they were willing to, probably more willing to put in other guys to see are they able to compete at that level, you know. Is writing about Jim's management that makes him, like Pat did brilliantly, and everyone does rightly say that what Jim did was building on the good groundwork by Pat. What did he do that took it on to the next level? It's certainly a different management style to Pat, but still more aloof, like standoffish, or he probably regimental, given his army experience. Is again, I'm only
making observations. You'd have to ask Jim that himself, but it was very much a tiered approach to management, where if you had an issue or a thought around defensive structures or kickouts, that you went to one of the coaches or the selectors involved with the defence, and then
rather than going to him.
Right. Whereas with Pat would have been a bit more. No, Jim was still open; he still go and chat to him about it, but that was just a structure that he would have had. That there was a line of seniority, you know. So that would be the difference, probably in one of the difference in their managerial approaches. What they do, both do quite well, is ensuring that people understand what's expected of them, and they're loyal for a game or two, but they're more loyal to the Dublin team and to the greater good. So they're happy and they're ruthless enough to make changes. Pat would have dropped myself certainly once. Didn't see it coming. Another time he took me off early in the league game, and but he was ruthless. I wasn't quite doing what I was asked.
You don't fully agree.
I didn't. I still don't. But times are gone. But in the greater scheme, now that I'm a bit older and involved with kind of coaching teams here and management type roles now, you can appreciate where he was coming from, I suppose. You know?
When you say more regimental, and you talked about like if you were bringing in an idea about something, you bring it to a coach and it works its way up the lines. Is that something that you found unusual at the start or difficult to grasp?
Yeah, it's certainly unusual. So the majority of us who played under Pat and those who were still left probably would have struggled with that kind of approach, because you know we'd won an All-Ireland playing a particular way in a particular environment.
Was it a more fun, open environment? Is that
fun?
I don't want to put words
yeah,
up.
Yeah. It was. No, it was. Just it was a different. Probably for me, it's not so much more fun. Like you were enjoying lads' company. Like you got great crack out working hard and trying to get the best out of yourself, and a bit of crack in the dressing room before and after. Probably because I knew Pat in as well. Maybe I was a bit more relaxed around Jim as well. But the way in which the messages were received or delivered, it was a very much a structured approach, and that everyone, even within the management team, had a specific role to deliver a particular job. Whereas with Pat, you could kind of chat to any of them that were kind of there in terms of any concerns or thoughts you might have, you know.
Because you know, you think GA dressing rooms, it's supposed to be a laugh, fun, and like the idea of armies type structure and I don't know, hierarchy and all this kind of stuff just sounds so the opposite of what a fun dressing room where you're doing it as a hobby.
Yeah. Well, again, if you ask any senior hurler or footballer, is their sport a hobby? Like, it's not a hobby. Like, it's well, I was teaching for a long time while I was playing. Really enjoyed teaching, but on reflection, like teaching was my hobby. Trying to play for Dublin was my job, and you know, lads are very much professional. Those who really want to achieve and get to the next level, and they pour absolutely everything into it. And bar a debt in a family, you know, they're not going to weddings, they're not going to christenings. You know, they're putting everything into their county setup. So it takes a particular type of individual and ambitious athlete who's kind of willing to do that. And yes, you have your bit of fun as well, but you know, if you want to be the best, you got to give it everything, like, you know.
And you're seeing that, I suppose, with guys coming through college now.
In terms of what they're putting into it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, a general comment, and I was listening to Kieran Donaghy on. Am I allowed to say off the ball? No.
Go ahead.
on off the ball, but it's a conversation that's certainly been had before and will come up again. Is, you know, the whole amateur ethos of Gaelic games is a wonderful ethos, but are we doing a disservice to our senior inter-county players financially and from a career perspective? I think we're doing a big disservice to them. I think guys are choosing to spend more time in college. They're I was working in youth ministry for the church before I went teaching, Shane, and really enjoyed it. But there was an awful lot of evening and weekend work, which obviously doesn't go with county or club training. So I worked my way back into doing the teaching dip and getting in the classroom. Really enjoyed that for a number of years. But there's probably a couple, I'm one of thousands of inter-county players, current and former, who have missed out on the likes of overtime, have missed out on probably career development opportunities or promotions, because if I take on this new role, or if I need to get myself in a position to perform a new role, that or to apply for this new role, well then I need to be doing the extra hours, but that's going to affect my inter-county setup.